the parts that I remember, we moved around a lot when I was a child, and we moved from Massachusetts when I was very young to Redmond, Washington, where the computer, Microsoft is. And then we moved back to Massachusetts when I was in the 2nd grade. And then we lived a couple of places there, and then I lived in Stowe, Massachusetts through the 8th grade. And then we moved, before I got to start high school, in a brand new high school, we moved to New York, to Long Island, New York. And I thought we were done moving, but my sophomore year we moved to another place in Long Island, New York. And then I thought we were done, and it was just like awful because we moved to Missouri when I was a senior. And,
so you moved a lot.
So I didn't appreciate my parents moving me in my senior year of high school.
What were your parents like when?
They were very nice. They were good parents. Grammy is kind of quiet in many ways, as far as not sharing a lot of information, with us as kids. She was a farm girl, and Papa, my father, who I called Dad, you called him Papa, if he was alive. Anyway, he was very busy when I was small, so I don't remember a lot when I was small. But when I got up to high school, we became very close, and we talked a lot about books and about politics and life and everything in general.
Yeah. Did you have any siblings?
I have a sister, Lorraine,
Okay.
and she's 2.5 years younger than me. And I wasn't always very nice to her.
Oh. What was school like for you?
I didn't like school.
Huh?
I wasn't very, I just didn't like the structure of school. I didn't like doing my homework. I was not very good at school. I was always kind of daydreaming. So I was thinking about other things or looking out the window at school. So I wasn't paying attention a lot of times. I don't think I was necessarily not so smart, but I just kind of drifted off a lot.
When did you decide to join the military? Or did you enlist, or were you drafted?
Well, let me tell you a little story first, from the childhood to the military. My father had been in World War II, and he had been infantry in North Africa and Sicily and Italy and Germany. And it was very rough, and he spent 4 years in the military over in Europe fighting the Germans. And so he told me when I was about the 8th grade, he said, whatever you do, don't go in the military. And then he said, and if you do go in the military, whatever you do, don't go in the army. And if you do, whatever you do, don't go in the infantry.
What's the infantry?
Infantry are the fighters on the ground. They're called grunts.
Okay.
A lot of times they're the people on the ground. And so when I was in college the first time, I really didn't like school. That was what my father wanted me to do. He wanted me to go to college, and I didn't want to be in college.
Did you end up going to college?
I went to college for 1.5 years down in Cape Girardeau at Southeast Missouri State. And I didn't do very well because I didn't want to be there. And even so, there was the war going on in Vietnam, and a lot of people went to college just to avoid going into the military.
Can you not get drafted if you're in college, or?
No, they had a draft exemption for college students that did well enough. Well, I didn't do so well, and I basically kind of on purpose flunked out in my sophomore year of college. And so these are all things that you probably shouldn't do. So I went down and I talked to the different branches of the military. I talked to the Air Force and they said that they had a 2-year waiting list. And I talked to the Navy and they said they had a 1-year waiting list to get in. And I talked to the Marines, and I don't know why, but for some reason they had a 6-month waiting list. So I went down in the Army and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I looked around the room and I saw all these pictures of different things that the Army does. And I saw this helicopter and I said, "I want to be a helicopter pilot."
Oh.
So I joined up, and a couple months later I was in the military, and my father was not very happy at all. And he was very hurt.
Oh, because he told you not to
Well,
join?
not because of what he told me, but he knew how bad war can be. So that's how I got into the military, and I went through basic training, and then I went to helicopter school down in Texas. And I got to the point where I soloed, but I wasn't...
So you flew on your own?
Yes, I flew on my own, but I didn't really do too well at the flying, and so I washed out of the helicopter school, and then they sent me back to infantry school.
Oh. Which is what he didn't want you to
Right,
do.
right. So I went back to infantry school, and as it turned out, it was probably a good thing, because helicopter pilots' life expectancy was not very long.
Oh. What exactly do helicopter pilots do?
They fly into the combat areas, and they're big targets out in the middle of the sky, so that, you know, they can be shot down very easily. So that it's not, and then they're going into the most dangerous areas, either to supply gunfire, or they're going in to pick up injured people, and so the enemy can see them very easily.
Oh. So, not that safe.
Not very safe. So infantry was not very safe, but it was safer than that.
What does the infantry
We marched around and to different places to either engage the enemy in firefights and stuff, or to just, you know, get to from one place to another place. All the time we were walking on the ground with heavy packs on our back with our weapons.
Did you enlisted, right?
Right,
Okay.
I enlisted. So, but I had, because I had gone into the helicopter pilot program, it was a 2-year enlistment if I didn't make it, and a 4-year enlistment if I did, which meant I probably would have gone to Vietnam 2 times.
Oh.
So I only had to go 1 time.
What age did you join?
I was 20, I was like about 19 when I enlisted. I was probably 20 when I started, and I got out at 22.
So you were in service for 2 years?
I was in the Army for 2 years.
Okay. And how long were you in the Air Force?
For 18 years. That way I retired. But I got out of the Army, and I came back and really fell in love with your grandmother.
So you
with
met her
Nan.
after you...
No, I met her before. We were good friends while I was in Vietnam and everything. We were just very good friends. We were not in love with each other or anything. We were just very close friends. And so when I came back from Vietnam, we became very close. And I wanted to get married, and she wouldn't marry anybody that didn't have a college education.
Oh.
So I went back to college, and I got my degree in economics, which was the fastest degree I could get. And then we got married, and shortly after, I didn't like the jobs I could get. And so shortly after we were married, I went down and saw the Air Force recruiter, and they asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, I've already tried helicopter pilot, and I don't think I want to do that. And pilot's a lot like that, so I want to be a navigator.
So they're in the Air Force, and
yes.
What do they do exactly?
What does a navigator do? Basically, a navigator uses all of his computer things and the, you know, handheld, like manual computers, not necessarily the electronic computers, using kind of, they're almost like a slide rule. And he tells the pilots which way to turn, how soon to turn, when to turn, and all that. So basically, the navigator tells the pilot what to do.
When you were in the Air Force, Dad said, I told stories about you guys traveling a lot. So, how long were you traveling for, and what places did you go to?
Well, the most traveling I did was the first 4 years in the Air. Well, first I went to a school for navigators for 9 months, and that was in Sacramento, and then we moved, and that's where your dad was born. While we were there.
In California?
Yes, Sacramento, California. So then we got assigned to Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California, Southern California. And we were there for 4 years. And I was flying all over the world. A lot of fun for me, but not too much fun for your Nan, who was at home with 2 and then 3 kids, because Jonathan was born down there.
When was Andrew born?
He was born when we got to Alaska.
Oh. Okay.
So I was flying all over the world, mostly in the Pacific. I was flying a typical flight would go from Southern California to Northern California to Alaska to Japan to Okinawa to the Philippines to Guam, back to Hawaii, and then back to Northern California and home. And that would be a week. I'd be gone for a week. So I'd be gone for a week, come home for 3 days, and then go back out again on some other mission. But, I mean, that was a typical mission, but also we got to places like Australia and Europe and Thailand, and so there were a lot of countries that we went to. But it was very difficult for your Nan to be home all the time with little kids and me being gone. I was gone sometimes 200 days a year.
Ooh, that's hard.
That was hard on her. So then I took, this was after 4 years, I took an assignment to go to Alaska. And in Alaska I was in rescue coordination, which meant in an office, I told the pilots of different aircraft where to search, what to look for, all those things. And I was home either every day or every night.
Oh, that's a lot easier for Nan.
So we were there for 5 years. I didn't travel very much. And then we went back to Northern California, and I taught young second lieutenant navigators how to find their way from point A to point B, navigation. That's the basics of what navigation is. And I did that for 3 years. Went down to Honduras for 6 months.
Where's Honduras?
In Central America.
Okay.
And I was down there for 6 months without the family, and it was very rough for me and for them. And then I took an assignment, my last assignment, to go to Germany, and I was the director of the Rescue Coordination Center in Germany. But we didn't do the same kind of rescues we did in Alaska, because in Alaska there weren't enough park department or state troopers to handle all the rescues in such a big area. So the military helped out. In Germany, the Germans could do what they needed themselves. They didn't really need us. So mostly what we did was practice for wartime rescues. And we were there for 4 years, and then I retired from the Air Force and came to Missouri.
Did you always live in this house when you got to Missouri, or?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. We were here. We've been here for over 25 years now. It's the longest that Nan or I have ever lived in one place in our lives.
Because you travel.
Because we've traveled a lot.
What is the coolest place you've traveled to? Since you traveled to so many places, what place did you like the most?
That's tough. I would say that I liked Australia the best. There was just so wide open. We flew on one time to Western Australia to a place called Exmouth or Learmouth, and there were kangaroos and emus, and and it was desert in the western part of Australia, all the way right down to the ocean.
Oh.
And then when I went snorkeling in the ocean, it was just like the most lush and full of life place ever.
Did you see the coral reef?
No, that's on the eastern side,
Oh.
but it was like a coral reef where we were. It was just like there were so many fish and octopus and just lots of plants in the water, and it was just very lively.
Did you go to New Zealand while you were there?
I've been to New Zealand twice. One time we got to stay there overnight, and so that was nice in Christchurch.
I'm having trouble thinking
Okay.
of questions
Yeah,
now.
well, we went to in Germany, you know, when your dad was in high school, in junior high school and high school, we traveled a lot because my job wasn't, even though I was a boss, I could take a lot of time off, and we'd go to really neat places. We went to Italy one time. We went to the battlefields of northern France along that area. We went to England a couple times. One time we drove to Ireland.
Ooh, that's...
We drove.
Oh yeah, you talked about you drove
We drove. We
to
drove.
Ireland.
Yeah, we drove to catch a ferry over to England, and then we drove across England, and then we took the ferry across to Ireland, and then we spent about 10 days in Ireland just sightseeing. Another time, I took your Aunt Kristen and your dad and your Uncle Jonathan, and we flew on a military airplane to Oslo, Norway,
Ooh.
and I bought they're called Scandinavian rail passes.
What?
They're kind of cheaper passes on the trains where you can get on a train you spend I can't remember how much, maybe $400 or something like that, and then you get on a train and you can go wherever you want, and you get off and get on, get off.
Dad talked about going to Hell, Norway.
Right. It's a town called Hell. It means something different. I think it means, Hell in Norwegian means light.
Well, there's a Scandinavian, or the Norse god named Hel. She's partially the god of the underworld, but I don't think necessarily death. So
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I had read somewhere that Hell meant light in Norwegian. So we traveled on the trains. We'd travel in the nighttime, and then we'd stop and we'd sightsee in the daytime, and then we'd do that for about 2 days, and then we'd get a hotel or a place to stay, and we would spend that night in the hotel, take showers and stuff, and then ride the train, go sightseeing again, and then ride the trains. We went way up above the Arctic Circle.
Ooh, that's.
And you could see the clock at the railroad at 2 o'clock in the morning very clearly.
Oh.
And then we went over to Sweden, and we went across the northern Sweden into Finland.
Ooh.
And we spent, I think it was Jonathan's 10th birthday in Oulu, Finland, Oulu.
When I did Dad's interview, he said that you guys went to Europe on his 11th birthday, I think.
Yeah, I think it was his 11th or 12th, something like that. I can't remember for sure, but we left on that day, on his birthday, so he got to go to Europe for his birthday.
That would be fun.
Yeah, so he got to go live there for 4 years. And then we did like my father did to me. We moved him back to St. Louis in his junior year of high school.
So he moved around a lot too.
Yeah, we did. It wasn't as bad as a lot of people in the military, but we moved to Southern California. We were there for 4 years, and we went to Alaska for 5 years, and Northern California for 3 years, and then Germany for 4 years. So a lot of times people move every year or two.
On all the interviews I've done, I've asked questions about their person's life and stuff, but then I've also asked questions about things they like books and movies.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your favorite books or book?
I like travel books. I like to read about places to go, and mostly I like the nonfiction travel books. Paul Thoreau, there's a whole bunch of them right up there. Traveling. He did his first book, I think, was the Great Railway Bazaar, where he took the Orient Express from London going across, and he went over to, and he traveled across, and he took other railroads down through India and Southeast Asia through Japan, and then took the Siberian Express across northern Russia, or at that time the Soviet Union. So I like travel books, just about anything travel books.
What's your favorite movie or movies that you like?
Oh, let me see. That would be back. I don't go to movies a lot anymore, but I really liked like Mutiny on the Bounty, which is about the.
Oh, you've told me. Is it
Yeah.
the pirates and their captain? Or?
Well, they weren't pirates; they were mutineers,
Oh, okay.
and they took over the ship, the Bounty, from Captain Bligh, and they some of them stayed in Tahiti, and some of them left on their ship on the Bounty, and they landed at an island called Pitcairn Island, and I think they burned, maybe somebody burned the ship. It might have been Christian, the captain.
Oh, because
Burned the ship so that they couldn't get away, and so they stayed there they had native women that they married, and they had children, and still the people at Pitcairn Island are relatives of the mutineers.
So that's a true story, or?
Yes, it's a true story, but the movie and the book were fiction. They're kind of very based on the true story, but
Over
I don't think
exaggerated, or?
yeah, probably romanticized and stuff, because it was hard to get all the facts, I'm sure. So they have to make up some, to make the story interesting. They had to make up some other things because they didn't know everything.
Are there any songs you like, or bands, or genres of music? Or?
Yeah, I like folk music, and I like cowboy music. I like.
You like Johnny Cash, right?
Yeah, Johnny Cash and various Michael Martin Murphy and various Ian Tyson. He was a folk singer who turned into cowboy music. So I like a lot of the.
Country.
It's kind of country and kind of more Western. Right?
Yeah.
Instead of country Western, it's just more on the Western side. But I like a lot of the folk music too from back in the 1960s.